Welcome everybody to Sustainable River Basin Management Module 3.2, Part 3. This time I'm going to speak to you about the environment. Let's first of all talk about environment in the context of nature versus culture. Now, and reflect upon this in terms of water use. Now, in the first place, we see our nature and the nature with us as part of the nature. And we use the nature as a source of water, as a source of food, as a source of raw materials, and a source of shelter, for instance. So we use nature as a source to serve us. That is what also other species are doing. But we also follow the resource. So we follow the resource, and the resource availability determines where we live, and it determines where we go to and how we live. And this is even applicable to a very urbanized person, disconnected maybe from the nature in general and the nature's flows in general. But even then, the resource availability determines where we go and where we live. And then we move up the scale to something that we can call culture or cultivation. So instead of following what nature offers at certain times, at certain locations, we have started to change our environment. We have shaped our landscape to access our resources, to harvest it, to easy access it. We may have deforested places, we have channelized our river systems to serve these accesses to the resource water and to harvest what the water offers us. Now, moving on this, we actually came to the point where we are not just cultivate nature, but we also engineer our nature. So, and this means that we have been changing our landscape to improve on yields, to improve the quality of the resources, to improve species, for instance, to serve a specific purpose for us. And we have been applying fertilizers or pesticides. We have been irrigating to grow certain resources at the place that suits us and to have it available at times in the specific location so that we don't have to migrate around to find the resource at a different location. And this comes along with, we could just call side effects if it wouldn't be as serious as it is. And those so-called side effects are pollution, they are also soil degradation, they are salination, eutrophication, waterlogging, and the list could continue. And this brings us to the next level along the scale, from engineering to trying to fix the impacts, to replace damages, to recreate something in a different location, maybe to try to restore environments. So this is the result that from the fact that whatever we do in terms of resource use, there will be waste produced which will impact the ecosystems. And then we come to a point where all this escalates, where we reach points of no return or have crossed points of no return. And this basically due to the population growth, which have escalated ecological disturbances and also alongside raised tensions and frustration in terms of access and allocation to water resources. So this is the chain that we have been following, and the question is how could we counterbalance this in the future. Now let's look into humans in our ecosystem. And we can look at this as one system or as boxes of subsystems. One of the subsystems would be the ecosystems. So there are a set of interactions taking place between various organisms. We have looked into the biogeochemical cycle earlier, the producers, the consumers, the decomposers, which move along a circle which does not grow in diameter, which is determined by water availability, water quality, the energy availability, and nutrient availability. And then we have a second subsystem, which we could call a social system or the human system. This is where we appear in a way outside this circle, because as such we would be actually part of the consumer's list in this ecosystem. But we have created our own subsystem, and we just call it here our social system. And the goal of our social system is welfare, well-being, good living, and so on. And this has been driven by a set of forces which are economical, institutional, social, and cultural driving forces. And the factors to this are property rights, for instance, trade incentives, subsidies, laws, and so on. And this is backfeeding into our social systems. It's driving our social systems, and there are institutions set up to provide policies, to provide norms and standards, and to rule those social systems. So, and there's a link between those. Remember that we have simply moved ourselves, disconnected ourselves as human systems from this subset of the ecosystems. But there's a link between those two, which is a backflow from the social system in terms of waste and disturbances. And there's a flow coming, an input flow from the ecosystem towards into the social system subset, which are ecosystem services and renewable resources. Now remember that we can measure all this, and we measure this in terms of GDP, for instance, or human health or human development index, and so on. There are many indicators which rate and rank our our functioning of the social systems, and most of them are monetary, whereas this is a service that quietly takes place and is a crucial input to the functioning of and existence of our social system. Now let's zoom into the water resources relations. Human activities and ecosystems are related, and they are related to the ecosystem's components. They are related to sharing water as a resource, and they are related to each other through landscape modifications. That means changes in ecosystems, and both of these, the human and the environment, are driven by changes. They are subject to permanent changes, ongoing changes, and are adjusted to it. Now, the impact of landscape changes that we impose by cultivating or engineering our environment, those landscape modifications appear as part of socioeconomic development. They are justified as being necessary and important for our social and economic development. And they are justified because they improve quality of life and economic welfare. But on the other hand, those changes in landscape processes are mostly water related. And in many cases, those modifications create unintended and in very many cases also completely not understood ecosystems effects. So, and overall this causes disharmony in environmental aspects between human societies, but also disputes and open conflicts. Now, let's look into the water resources and ecosystems dependencies a little bit more, because this is crucial to understand. And the first of all is ecosystems are all water dependent. There's not a single ecosystem which would be outside this. And our major spheres are terrestrial, and let's remember of the grassland units, the forests and woodlands, the tundra, the deserts, and crops and plantations. They all depend on water. And our aquatic system in itself, the termoidy, includes the water dependency. Think of our streams, the natural and artificial lakes, and the wetlands. Now, let's look into the ecosystems and the water in relevance or water in those ecosystems. In terrestrial systems, water acts as a determinant, and it also acts as a nutrient carrier. That means with water scarcity, certain vegetation types will not be able to survive. So we may end up having a desert, for instance, or have a forest where we have less water available. And we may end up with a floodplain or a grassland pattern where we have more water available throughout the year. So water is determining what type of ecosystem we have, and the transitions taking place between those ecosystems are determined by, among other aspects like temperature and solar radiation and so on, slopes, by water mainly. And in the aquatic ecosystem, our water is both, it's a habitat and it's also a nutrient carrier. Now, this is on the environmental side. Let's look into where water is important in our social systems. It acts as a human life support. We need water as drinking water. It's a life support. It helps us in food production, in energy transport. It's also a mobile dissolvent. It's a microclimate moderator. It's an energy carrier. All of those are important just for social systems. And we can state without hesitating that humans and ecosystems are interdependent. Both rely directly and critically on water. And ecosystem goods and services, for that reason, need protection. It also implies that without protecting ecosystems, goods and services, our social welfare will completely fail, our societies will fail. So the interference by humans on ecosystems takes place either directly by changing local water flows, by changing pathways, or for instance, or it could take place in an indirect way by, for instance, modifying soil permeability, for instance, through urbanization, or by changing vegetation, or by changing runoff and creating flash floods. Overall, all of these ecological functions of water are influenced and perturbated by human actions, such as the land use that we employ, the biomass production that we encourage by using certain fertilizers, the water pollution, the degradation, and so on. So the key challenges to this are to identify and also to influence and try to confront the biotic interlinkages between freshwater pathways from the terrestrial to the aquatic ecosystems. And how we do that, we use a framework that we call ecological flow requirements, which has been incorporated into environmental impact assessments, also into planning of infrastructure projects in river basins, and how this environmental flow requirement is determined. I will briefly touch upon this. This shows us a case where we have the blue box indicating a river basin. It could also be a different scale. We could look into a watershed, for instance, or a command area. And what we account for is the surface runoff and the groundwater runoff, and including the return flows and consumptive uses. Remember, we call this component the blue water component, all departing from the input in terms of precipitation into the river basin, and the different water uses and consumptive uses by different ecosystems occurring in this river basin, which would be budgeted in terms of green water use. Now, by moving from a downstream approach, the overall budget available, the overall knowledge of what type of ecosystems we have, let it be human-induced crops or urban areas, let it be natural systems, all accounted for, there should still be a percentage of water reaching the estuary, reaching the ocean, although many in water-scarce parts would argue here that each drop reaching the ocean is a lost drop of water. But you remember that our estuaries are highly productive in terms of biomass. So for the survival of this part of the stream, the estuarine, it's important that water reaches that part and maintains it. So moving up from a downstream water availability, water needs assessment through these various segments of the stream, the river basin, to the upstream, we can account and allocate amounts of water and water qualities to these specific compartments of the ecosystems. Now, and this enables the inclusion and allocation of water to all of the water users, including the environment. In many cases, we only budget for the crops and urban areas or settlement areas. We are not accounting for what our forests or grasslands or wetlands need in terms of water. So that is what we try to overcome by calculating environmental flow requirements. With this, we want to move to conclusions. What we have been showing here is that humanity critically depends on the ecosystems which offer renewable resources and produce ecological services. So there's two products. We as people, as societies, depend on the resource and the services. And while human activities aim to improve welfare, those are driven by our social forces. and they are influenced by institutional systems. So those are man-made, they are human-made, and as such also can be shaped, and we should be able to influence them to better integrate with environmental issues and integrate with human issues. Whatever we do, we always produce waste, and the way we deal with the waste is a relationship to our environment, which has to change. We've talked about this earlier. And both of these interferences cause substantial disturbances and influence the functioning of the ecosystems. So this is something, no matter how well we are doing on this site here, as well, we always have an impact on the function of our ecosystems in a positive or in a negative way. With this, I want to leave you and see you next time again for Module 3